Hello again. This is Andrew Culkin, author of Amanda, A Cautionary Tale. It's the story of my wife's 20-year decline with alcoholism and ultimately her untimely death a little over 2 years ago. Today, I really want to talk about ways that family members can respond to a loved one who is clearly an alcoholic and who is creating havoc, and they're in denial. And what I mean by havoc, and that's really up to the family, the tolerance level of the loved ones that are around the alcoholic, if it's affecting them in a plethora of negative ways, it's interrupting their life, it's bothering their existence, then it's time for the family to take action. And these are steps that I could go over. I'm going to go over, and that I hope to help families realize they need to take action and they need to take these particular steps, maybe not in order, but they need to do something for their own safety and for the safety of the alcoholic themselves. Number one is to create a family intervention as soon as possible. You need to create clear-cut lines to the alcoholic. An intervention can be done several ways. Simply set the person down. Depending on the relationship, if it's a husband and wife, well, they need to hash it out. Well, that was kind of that was my situation. But it could also be a child. It could be parents, or it could be, one of those relationships. It's more difficult when it's a child because it's difficult to. It's more difficult to cut the cord with the child and to cut your behavior with the child, to cut your codependency with the child, because it's your child, depending on the relationship. But the first thing is to have an intervention, and you have to draw a line in the sand. You have to say things like, if you don't go to this rehab, if you aren't willing to take these actions, then number one, you need to leave the house. You're no longer going to have a car. We're no longer going to finance you. And you're not going to have money for food. And we're no longer going to have contact with you. You're no longer going to exist in our lives the way you currently do until you do take the action of going to a rehab. Now, I say rehab because that's generally the direction of an intervention. The person has to go to a 30-day facility to start the process of recovery. And that's generally the most, the most believed way, the best way for someone to start their road to recovery. By no means I could talk for hours on rehabs, but it's a beginning. It's by no means anything more than a Band-Aid because the person has to do the work. Another thing that you can do before you even get to the rehab stage is that the family needs to remove all alcohol from the home. And this means everything: beer, wine, spirits, even kitchen sherry, anything with alcohol in it, you need to remove from the house. It's one of the first steps. If you're serious about helping this person, they can't have any access. And you really got to shut it down. You just can't have any access. Or if you do, you need to lock it up. And you need to hide it yourself and make sure they have no access to it. If you need to put it in a vault, if you're not a teetotaler and you want to have a glass of bourbon on Friday night, put it in a vault. And I'm not kidding. Another way is to remove all access to money. You can no longer be codependent. In other words, you can no longer finance the loved one's problems. You have to take away ATM cards. You have to hide your wallet. Specifically with my wife at night, I used to have to hide my wallet. I used to have to hide it in my closet. Same thing with my keys, so she wouldn't have access to a car, so she could go to a store and buy alcohol. These are steps that I had to take. Were they ultimately successful? No, but they were for that period of time, and I was able to shut her down as far as access to alcohol. You have to confiscate credit cards, ATM cards. I mean, I had problems where I took away ATM cards, which is her bank account. I had to. I couldn't allow her to have access to money. The problem is, she would just order another card, and 3 weeks later, she would have access to the card again. But all you can do is to make them understand that you're serious and that things are going to change. That's the best thing you can get out of taking those kind of actions. You have to remove all access to driving privileges, especially if the person has had DUIs, 1, 2, 3, however many. If they're a danger to themselves and a danger to anyone on the road. Imagine if your loved one hit a kid or hit anybody, because they were drunk. It would be partly your fault in some way. You would be responsible. You would feel responsible because you allowed that person to get behind the wheel of a car. There's part of that too. You have to confiscate their car keys whenever possible. I mean, near the end, the last few years of my wife's life, I never let her drive. There's no way. She would have killed somebody. Her truck, she had a BMW X5. It sat in the driveway. It sat in the garage for years. I used to start it up once in a while so the battery wasn't dead. I would not let her drive. She had 4 DUIs. She no longer drove after the 3rd one. However, she did, was able to get the car keys occasionally. Okay. Whenever possible, you need to deny access to phone apps. If you have an iPhone or whatever kind of phone you have, the apps on the phone, so that you can't have a thing called Doordash. Because near the end, my wife, when I took everything away, bank accounts, car keys, so she had no way to access to get alcohol, other than maybe friends coming over to drop off alcohol. The only access was, unfortunately, this invention called Doordash. I came home one day from work, and this lady was delivering 2 cases of beer to our front door, and I had just about had it because I had found every possible avenue I could think of to stop her. DoorDash and also Uber and what's the other one? Lyft. So when you take the car keys away, they're going to get creative. They're going to find other ways to get to a store. You still got Uber and Lyft. If you go on their phone and you're able to erase these apps, the best you can do is make them understand that you're serious and you're going in a different direction. If they continue with their behavior, at least you have documented it between the two of you that this is no longer acceptable behavior. That's the best you can do as a loved one, is to face the music, draw a line in the sand, make sure they understand that there's no confusion. You will no longer tolerate the behavior. That's the best you can do by taking all these actions. That's what you can do from your side, from a family's perspective, and you're also protecting yourself. You're also protecting yourself. I hope some of these ideas have helped. I want people to go in the right direction. Again, if you want to go to the website, you can sign up for pre-orders for the book. Again, it's www.amandacautionarytale.com. I also have a Facebook group. We have excerpts and we talk about some of these same conversations on Facebook. And again, it's the same name, amandacautionarytale.com. You can go in there and request joining the group, and we'd be glad to have you. Until we talk again, thanks so much for listening.